Hi and welcome to a weekly outlook. This is Kim speaking on Monday the 9th of April. So we can see what the markets are doing here. I thought I'd just look at the fundamentals a little bit and the core analysis as ever. I'm going to start off just looking at what we got in store for us this week, and then just sort of look at why we're a little bit stalled where we are maybe. So in terms of this week, it's very little of real significance. There's something, I mean, it could become significant depending on what's in them, but leading through Monday, nothing there. Tuesday, we've got an MPC member speaking, due to speak the role of central banks as society. And okay, I don't think we'll get too much excitement from that, but that is out tomorrow at 10:30. Speaker, you never know what they could say. More importantly, in Australia, then you've got the governor speaking, the Reserve Bank of Australia, due to speak at recent developments of Australian global economies. There you go, and audience expect questions there. So we may, for trading the Aussie dollar, may get some more coming out from there. Important manufacturing production data coming out on Wednesday morning as well. Most important point there. Draghi is speaking, but not a significant speech by the looks of it. European Students' Award ceremony. I don't think he's going to be announcing any quick key policy decisions there. We've got some US inflation that is quite key, or very key at the moment, and looking for something. It's looking flat, if anything, at the moment. Expectation is flat or lower. The core figure is my important one here at 0.2. So pretty flat expectation. Important then the FOMC meeting minutes. Now these could spark some volatility through the markets. I mean, a lot of it said after the event, but either way, if there's something that was missed, we could see some volatility around those minutes. Running into Thursday, April the 12th then, and Bank of Japan governor speaking, then due to speak at a quarterly branch meeting. Okay, so it may get some volatility at 1:30 a.m. on that. I'll be sitting up waiting for it, I have to admit. Leading through then, 12:30, ECB monetary policy meeting accounts. Now, in the past, I've said this before, I would totally disregard these because Draghi would have said it all. But it turned out a couple of meetings ago he hadn't said it all. So, and we got the surprise. The following meeting, last month's data didn't really provide much movement. But all the same, I'd be wary about that data coming out. It's what they haven't said in the meeting afterwards, but it's what's been said in the meeting at the time is important. We got Carney speaking late on Thursday. I think that's I was in Toronto. We won't be worrying about that then. And that's it. So there's very little out there this week in terms of key movers, the manufacturing production data, the inflation data there, and the minutes from the FOMC and the ECB. So that's what I'm really looking for there. So we're left then to technicals this week, and part of the thing we got here is this stalling or stalemate in terms of movement of the euro. Now, it's been in this range for some time. It's got to do something. I was sort of looking for some sort of clues on what may be going and where the money may be going. Firstly, I just looked at why things are pretty stalled, and when you start looking, I looked at last month's data here just to get a feel of what's going on here, and you see all these misses, all this negativity sitting through the French and German data. There was a lot of sort of just hits or negativity coming through, which may suggest it's peaked a little bit in Europe. And then I thought, well, let's have a look and see what's happened in the US, and because we're looking at the opposite pairing, and well, there was a bit of positivity coming through, but it was very mixed, and we saw the jobs report wasn't particularly grand on Friday there. It's a bit weak in terms of what we saw there. We're seeing enough of the red numbers coming through here, but it's important, obviously. We're seeing the key numbers that are disappointing. More so retail sales, core retail sales came in quite disappointing. Figures that might sort of average earnings had come in originally the previous month, they're lower. So there was data amongst that was a bit weak. it was a bit mixed the previous month. This current month, we've just seen the figure. Average earnings did pick up a bit, but not enough to send the dollar up high. And with the employment data numbers themselves coming back this time, so it's all a bit of a stalemate. And then I thought, well, have a quick look at the cable details as well. If I can just move this out of the way so I can see more. Sorry, you can't see that. So there we go. And I thought, well, let's have a look at what's happening in the UK as well. And again, it's a bit stalemate. Okay, we saw some promising figures at early March that sort of may have led things higher, and it may be just showing a little bit more bullishness than everything else. The average earnings went up um, in February, so those figures coming through there in March. The voting for interest rate increase, but this is pretty much priced in now in terms of May, isn't it? So there's an expectation of that coming in. Overall, slightly bullish, slightly more bullish maybe with the pound than the or the UK, should I say, against the US or the euro in certain figures there. But of course, Brexit's just gone off the main front headlines at the moment for a short while at least. It's been sort of switched away. If that starts popping back in, as it will do, you could see a bit more negativity kicking around that. So overall, it's all about style, isn't it? It's not one economy particularly leading the other. We've got trade wars mentioned, etc. So it leaves us in this sort of stalemate situation on the at least on the economics. So let's look at the technicals, and well, they've pretty much shown this over the last God knows how many weeks here. We just sort of in this very tight range, seeing much of a muchness. I did look at the sentiment and started looking at sentiment, and I'll run through this in a bit more detail. But looking at the euro sentiment here, the changes from the previous report here, and we're seeing that long positions reduced and short positions, but more long than short, 2-to-1 on the longs. So it may be just an edge off there, coming off a little bit. I mean, still potential open interest is significantly higher on the longs than the shorts, but sliding off there a little bit there. So it would suggest the euro, may suggest that the euro may soften a tad in view of the bigger traders. Let's just run through these, the pound as well whilst I'm on this. In fact, no, I'm going to look at the technicals of the euro first, and I'll come back and do the pound. So technically, well, it's technically challenged, isn't it? It's got this potential here. I've just gone down through the dailies here just to see what's happened. It's stuck around where the monthly pivots are. It pulls away for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, pulls back to it each time. So it's a bit of a challenge. Now the thing is here, it's starting as a longer term trend line I've got on the chart here, starting to challenge that a little bit more. It's really whether it can start breaking. If it starts breaking through that, it'll be much more bearish, and maybe it'll be a start of a bit more softening. Certainly we're seeing as I said, the long positions reduce a bit on the Kilt analysis, and it might tie in with that change of sentiment a little bit at least, but it remains pretty stale. The pound then, let's just come back, look at the sentiment of the pound. So the sentiment, there were actually more short positions closed off than long positions here. It changes, it's -9 in this, so it's sort of just changed that around a little bit. It's changed that balance just a fraction. So it's still got that erring on the more bullish side maybe, for sure. Now let's just come back and look at the weeklies there. Solid weekly bar into its weekly 8 moving average there. It's got that weekly 200 still drawing, maybe trying to draw above where we are at the moment. Struggling a little bit here. I mean, up until Thursday rather, it barely moved. Thursday sold off. Friday moved straight back to where it had been previously. It's still erring for me, more long than short, but it may just get dragged off if the dollar starts strengthening, particularly with a weaker euro. Now, if it does start pitching up through the week here, I've just adjusted my trend lines here, and that certainly will be a draw back towards that trend above us most likely. As I said, also there's the weekly 200 for it to move towards. It's pretty much the pound. It's dollar yen. Dollar yen's been struggling. It's been struggling with options. It sits all around it, and it almost too frequently becomes untradeable. So yen positions, the shorts reducing there quite significantly, a bit like the pound actually. Shorts reducing, pretty neutral in terms of long-short ratios there. So pretty neutral, and it's not really doing too much here weekly wise up at all. Just run into its upper bands. It's got the potential, maybe if it can break through that level, to push on some more. It's put a high on this dailies here. It's put a higher low in, and it's got, as I say, it's got an edge of positivity towards the upside, if anything. So maybe just a bit of unwinding and a bit more movement potential upside there. If I was looking at on the short side, and this could drop quite suddenly, as it often does, I'd be looking. I'd certainly have a trend line across the lows there, looking for a break of that sort of area before it becomes short, or want to become short. Okay, that's dollar yen. Just to bear in mind, of course, that the dollar yen is that the yen often gets bought when there are more serious concerns around the world. It's become a bit of a safety point, so just bear that in mind, particularly with the sort of volatility and the comments going on around the world at the moment. Aussie dollar, it's continued in this slow but certain downward sort of drag. It's certainly, as I keep on saying, on a daily basis, it's one of the weaker pairings at the moment, or weaker currencies at the moment relatively. It's selling off again here. Now I will do the control find and get the Aussie dollar up today. There it is, the Aussie dollar. So someone reminded me how to do that. I was searching for it last week. Aussie dollar then, change, shorts built up a little bit, longs come off a little bit, suggesting that, well, it's more short than long at the moment. It's neutral in terms of the overall open positions here, non-commercials, quite a neutral perspective. So it doesn't give it really much potential, does it, for the upside on that basis? So it's an easier sell than a buy, I think. Canadian dollar then, finally. Canadian dollars had done pretty well with oil prices pushing up. That softened up a little bit, and we're seeing a sort of bounce from the sort of whole group of moving averages that are sitting there. Just on Friday managed to sell off into the daily 50. Pushed back up to the weekly pivot so far this morning. Could push on a little bit further. Bigger picture, it had broken the original trend there eventually as it rolled over the early last week. It could push up a little bit more. Yeah, could push up some more. Now let's just get the yen. Let's look at yen futures. If I can find them, it might be quicker to control find yen. There we go. I got the wrong one. I don't want the market. I want the Japanese yen. There we go. And positioning here, short positions -15. So again, it's flattening out somewhat here. I'm looking at yen while I'm talking about the CAD. Let me get back to the CAD. I don't want the yen at all. Someone's just put me off a little bit there. I have to own that. There we go. CAD. So CAD, dropping the long positions a little bit here, short positions improving slightly. Overall suggests weakness in the CAD there. So on that sentiment, and the short positions are still the biggest by some way. Sorry, so I just got distracted. I've got a question here in terms of in our trading room whilst I'm doing this, in terms of why is the yen so strong, or why does it get stronger? Why is it a safety currency when the problems around North Korea? Well, you've got to remember the problems, the likelihood of North Korea actually kicking off was pretty slim, I think, in the first place, and it was probably drawn in a lot more by politicians, etc. But the dollar itself used to be the safety currency, and it's certainly gone off the boil. The yen's certainly become a bit more it's a balance really between the euro and the yen, where money's starting to flow through, and it's just where the money flows run to. So I mean, the North Korean situation, it looks like that may be being closer to some sort of resolution, hopefully, so that helps the situation there, and it could be part of the reason why the yen softened recently, as the fear factor from that moves away. And yes, I know it doesn't make sense. It's so close, but there we are. It could be easily gone. Anyway, there we go. My traders in the room there have thrown in questions just to put me off my stride here. I will have a quick look at oil, and I just at oil. I'm not going to look at oil at all first. I'm going to look at a quick look at gold if I can. For some reason, it's not coming up on the screen. Let's have a look at this. There we go. So gold, it's no surprise that the weekly gold is in a similar choppy position as the euro, and it's all same here really. It's not really moving too much, no real obvious guidance here in terms of where it's going. Let's push that to bed and I will look at oil now. And let's look at West Texas. Well, it's on a weekly basis. Bearish pivot swing sitting on that weeklies following last week, which suggests it might ease back a bit as we move through. Where we're not into May, June time. In June we get driving season in the US, which tends to create more demand, of course, historically. Oil, looking at this here, it's just sliding off somewhat. Just going to prop a trend line across the lows here, because that becomes quite a key point. If I can get the trend line to stay on, there we go. It's pretty much where it's sitting at the moment. I might have misdrawn that slightly, but prices bounce off a little bit, but it does look like it's certainly softened there. Could slide off some more, and again that would push the Canadian dollar upwards. Okay, that's it for me for this week. I've been distracted enough from the traders in the trading room, or at least one of them, or maybe two. Have a great week. Bye for now.